Hello. A couple of days back, I had a post where I was talking a little bit about how to navigate conflict in a relationship, effectively using the word and. And the purpose of that post was to help you to understand and honor that there are two sides in any conflict. And in a relationship, it's really important to honor both sides so that the relationship can feel whole and both parties can feel listened and understood. However, you might find that you're struggling with heartbreak if a relationship has ended for you recently, or you are actually facing the heartbreak of ending a relationship in the very near future. In both cases, this post is going to help you to navigate the scenario of your heartbreak. By no means should you consider that this is the catch-all solution to solve everything in your heartbreak. Heartbreaks are pretty complex in nature, and there's a lot more to them than, a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. Deeper emotions and patterns are involved. So this is just one of the ways in which you can start to navigate your heartbreak if you have faced one recently, or if you feel that your relationship is going toward a phase of closure where it's actually going to end. So I want to first talk about what heartbreak is, because I find that it's useful to set the context of what a heartbreak is before we can dive into how we can navigate the heartbreak. A heartbreak is quite simply the distance between how you expected a relationship to turn out and the reality of how the relationship is turning out or had turned out. And so the distance between the two is your expectation of how you wanted the relationship to turn out, and it didn't go in that specific direction that you were expecting it to go. So that is what a heartbreak is. It is you feeling the heaviness of something not going according to plan. You had a bigger dream and goal for where you wanted to be, and that is what the heartbreak is. Now, when you are faced with this situation of a relationship coming to an end or having ended, and you are dealing with your heartbreak, you will find that your thoughts are relentless. You have this never-ending flow of voices in your head which are telling you, oh, if I could have done this only, if I could have maybe tried this, things would have been better. So I want you to just pause and feel into that for a moment. Anytime we go into any situation of life, wishing that we had been a certain way, it is us actually feeling guilt and shame for what happened in the relationship and what our role was that we think contributed to that situation in the relationship. And so this is a feeling of guilt and shame. And when we feel guilt and shame, I can guarantee you it's going to keep you trapped in your pain. However, guilt and shame as a feeling or sensation exists in your body, in your world, for a reason. What I want you to get in the habit of doing when you are encountering guilt and shame is to look underneath the guilt and shame instead of just labeling the guilt and shame as guilt and shame and getting trapped in that vocabulary of guilt and shame. So essentially, this is the crux of all healing work, is that instead of just giving something a label, we want to look under the hood of that label. And true healing occurs when we can get under the hood and get present to what's actually going on for us individually. It's not the same for everybody. So each person is going to feel different emotions. There are a whole gamut of emotions we can feel in a heartbreak, ranging from grief and sorrow to guilt and shame, to a feeling of hopelessness, to a feeling of helplessness. There's a whole gamut of emotions that can come in. So now what I want you to look at is, what are the behaviors and actions that you believe you exhibited that are causing your guilt and shame? Now, typically, when we take this question and look at it, some of us may be able to pinpoint it right away and say, this is exactly what I did that caused my own guilt and shame. For example, it might have been, I reacted in a very frustrated or angry way when my partner gave me resistance in a certain area. So that might have looked like my partner liked to have alone time when they came back from work. I liked to be connected. I liked to be in conversation when we both were done with our work day. And I felt that I had to make a compromise every single time in the relationship. And this led to my frustration. And I didn't know how to voice my frustration. And I ultimately started to really lose it in the relationship and get angry in the relationship. So so now when a relationship breaks up, you might say, well, I could have done better. I didn't have to get angry. So when you have a scenario like this, where you are doubting whether you did the right thing and you're feeling shameful and guilty, you are going to trap yourself in the situation. So I want you to step back from it, and I want you to look at what is the underlying belief behind this guilt and shame. So if you look at the underlying belief, for example, in this situation or the scenario that I just gave you, it could have been, I could have been more of the giving person. I could have been more patient. And that might be true, that you could have been more patient, more giving. But, and I'm going to use the word but here, I want you to pause and reflect as to whether that is the only truth that's available to you in this moment. Okay? So the belief shift you must have is that there's more than one truth, because there are two people involved in the relationship, and there's more than one truth in the relationship. In fact, I would venture to say that there's at least two versions of truth hanging out in your relationship. And in fact, there is at least a third level of truth that you each can get to through the relationship. So a relationship is somewhere where we get to process who we are not and what is in the way of loving somebody in a whole way without allowing our egos step in. This is easier said than done, because our ego will step in and it will show us areas where we are not that great in terms of loving others. And so it takes a lot of humility to recognize that within ourselves. And also it takes a lot of humility to recognize where we are not allowing love to come to us. This is the key shift I want you to have. So it's a two-way street. Love and acceptance are in fact a four-way street. I'll be doing a post on that in the near future, so look out for that one. But know that in a relationship, it's a two-way street. So you want to recognize that the way you are framing it right now is that everything rests on your shoulder and you could have done something to achieve a better outcome. So it's more of a, but I could have done it. Instead, I want you to move toward an and way of framing the situation. And what that might look like is, while it is true that I could have done things better. It is also true that the other side could have done ... So in this case, it could have been that the other side actually showed up more compassionately to you, acknowledged your needs, wants, and desires in the relationship, or whatever that was. So it's an and instead of a but. This is really important because it brings forth this important notion of having a fair exchange in the relationship. We as human beings, especially right now on the planet, are moving from what used to be quite a codependent way of having relationships to an interdependent way of having relationships, which means that you stand as an individual, your partner stands as an individual, and then you together stand as an entity, a third entity called the relationship in the relationship. So you want to honor that you have your needs, your partner has their needs, and you both want to have the relationship to get your needs met. And it's not a but, it's an and. Both of you are equally important in the relationship. So this is a recognition that I want you to come in with when you are thinking about your heartbreak. How do we relate this back to our heartbreak? When we are regretting, when we are doubting, when we are fearing, we'll keep staying in the realm of doubt, regret, and fear. And instead, when we can reframe it as truth, as what actually happened in reality, we can step into a bigger version of ourselves instead of shrinking ourselves and our energy to fit into the context of a relationship. A codependent relationship is one in which we shrink our energy to stay in the relationship. An interdependent relationship is one in which we allow our energy to open us to love in the relationship by acknowledging that it's important for us to be us, for our partner to be them, and for the relationship to have sovereignty as well. When we can step into thinking of relationships in this way, as opposed to our old habitual patterns of thinking, which we have definitely absorbed through our childhood and adulthood relationship patterns. It comes from a direct translation of how we experienced our childhood and how we experience the relationship with our caregivers and parents. And so we learned by watching our role models, our parents, our caregivers, and we absorbed that that was the way in which we should function in our adulthood relationships. And so in a lot of ways, in the area of our adult relationships, we are playing small and juvenile. And so this is a calling for us to step into a larger game, to play a bigger game in our relationships. And you may be quite adept at what you do as an entrepreneur or as a professional. However, when it comes to the game of relationships, you may be playing a small game. So it's an opportunity for you to step up and play a bigger game to bring in a little bit more relational intelligence into how you operate and more maturity in how you function. And relationships are the toughest game on the planet. So when we can bring in a confidence and a sense of self in the relationship, we are actually more capable of being with another and them as who they are. And this is the beauty, the true beauty of a relationship is to be that mirror for us, to show us where we've actually developed parts within ourselves that are wanting to come back to us. Have a good day.